Anytime children become cold-hearted murderers, the age-old question is asked: are killers born or made? Or is it nature or nurture? Criminologists believe that what compels someone, especially a child, to commit murder cannot be credited to just one thing. Genetics and environment play key roles in the mind of a murderer. However, in the case of Mary Bell, her upbringing was brutal and tumultuous, leading many to believe her environment entirely triggered her to become a double murderer. Two toddler-age boys in 1968 fell victim to the bare hands of Mary Bell, an 11-year-old girl who the community would never have suspected if it wasn't for her cruel and boisterous behaviour. When Mary Flora Bell was born on May the 26th, 1957, her mother, Betty McCricket, reportedly told the doctors, "Take that thing away from me." Betty was a 16-year-old sex worker at the time, and the two lived in an impoverished area in the West End of Newcastle, England, called Scotswood. Betty would often leave on work trips for hours at a time, leaving Mary to care for herself. Things weren't better when she returned though, as she mentally and physically abused Mary, and on many occasions she attempted to give Mary away to strangers. Mary was subject to several near-death experiences, including overdosing on sleeping pills and falling from a window, though witnesses reported that Betty actually thrown her out of the window. Mary sustained severe brain damage from this, specifically to the prefrontal cortex, which is the area of the brain that is key to reasoning, impulse control, comprehension, and much more. According to Mary herself, she was exploited by her own mother for sex work at just 4 years old. And not only did Mary have her own fair share of life-threatening occurrences, but she also witnessed her 5-year-old friend run over and killed by a bus. By the age of 10, Mary was, unsurprisingly, a withdrawn and strange child, but her behaviour turned more violent as the months passed. Just a few weeks before Mary committed her first crime, Mary was playing with a 3-year-old boy when he fell off a building. He sustained only minor injuries, but it's widely speculated that Mary was to blame. She had grown aggressive in school and appeared to lack empathy. Just the day after the little boy had fallen, 3 mothers reported to police that their daughters had been strangled by Mary. However, Mary only received a lecture on good behaviour from the police. Mary must have felt invincible, as if she could do anything without receiving major consequences. Failing to evaluate Mary proved to be a terrible decision for the authorities. On May the 25th, 1968, just a day before she turned 11, Mary lured 4-year-old Martin Brown to a deserted house in Scotsworth. Acting as her accomplice was her friend, Norma Bell, who had no relation to Mary. After the 3 were indoors, Mary viciously strangled the young boy with her bare hands. After he passed away, the 2 girls fled the scene and attempted to return a short while later. However, 2 local boys had beaten them there. They were playing in the house when they stumbled upon little Martin's body. Martin's body lacked any sort of evidence that a murder had taken place. It was the late 1960s and forensic science hadn't advanced yet, so they weren't able to determine a definite cause of death. A few days after Martin's death, Mary rang the doorbell of the family's home. She wished to see Martin, to which his mother informed her that he was dead. Mary claimed she already knew that. She simply just wanted to see the body in the coffin. Shortly after this, Mary and Norma broke into a nearby school and left notes claiming to be responsible for Martin's death. The police assumed this was a morbid prank. Mary was openly confessing to murdering Martin Brown at school, but since she had a reputation for being outlandish, nobody believed her. It wasn't long before they would strike again. Just 2 months later, on July the 31st, Mary and her partner in crime, Norma, lured 3-year-old Brian Howe to an uninhabited region in Scotsworth. From there, Mary strangled the boy to death. However, she didn't stop there. She used scissors to carve the letter M into his stomach. Ominously, both Mary and Norma aided in the search for Brian after he was reported missing. The two girls coincidentally led the family to exactly where he was. With the murders of 2 children on their hands, the police knew they needed to act quickly. Investigators spoke to local children in the area, to which one child told them he'd seen Mary and Norma with Brian just before he was lured away. On the day of Brian's burial, Mary was spotted outside the house, and when she saw the coffin, she laughed and rubbed her hands together. When police brought the girls in for questioning, their stories didn't add up, and Mary told a story about having seen a boy hit Brian on the day he died. She claimed he was carrying around a pair of scissors. This was the exact moment police knew they had their killer. The mutilation of Brian's body had been kept from the public. Both were charged with the murders of the 2 boys. During the trial, Norma showed great remorse and emotion, but Mary seemed cold. Ultimately, the charges against Norma were dismissed. Mary, though, received a life sentence in December 1968. She was released just 12 years later, at the age of 23, after shuffling from institution to institution. She was given a new name and identity and has started a family of her own. Mary today lives a simple and private life. Many believe it's unfair she's able to exist without the worry of constant press and backlash from the public. However, the legacy of the atrocious acts will follow her and her family forever.